Hi, my name is Keith Cooper, Northlight Images, and in this video I'm going to do an overview and a review of the Epson EcoTank ET-2850 printer. Now there are a range of printers like this that are produced by Epson, slightly different model types, but it's a 4-color ink tank printer. That means there are no cartridges. You fill the ink from bottles, and you can see at the front here the little tanks which show you how much ink you've got left. In general, these sort of printers are much cheaper to use because you don't need to keep replacing cartridges. Now, why this particular printer am I looking at? Well, it's a 4-color printer, so cyan, magenta, yellow and black. But in this one, the black ink, there's a larger black ink tank for that. The black ink is a pigment ink and the 3 colours are dye inks. Now, I'll come back to details about what sorts of prints this does well, what sorts of prints it doesn't do so well. But this is very much a home printer. It's aimed for home office use, relatively light use. It has a scanner on top, does letter A4 paper. Quite a good scanner, perfectly good enough for scanning basic artwork if you want to make cards. Now, I'll come back later about types of media I've tested, but you can see there's an awful lot of different types of media I've got here, from ordinary paper through to pre-creased cards that you can use. And you can use this printer for printing greetings cards. I've got some examples up here. Now, I've got other videos that look in more detail at the printing of these things, of how the printing works. This is an overview review and is intended to supplement the main written review. Now, my written reviews are always quite long, printer reviews. They have a lot more technical detail in them. So if you don't find the detail you're looking for in this particular video, have a read of the main review, which I'll put a link to in the notes for the video. And feel free to ask questions, because it's people asking questions about this sort of stuff that gives me ideas for other videos, and it helps me explain and clarify things and produce things that are easier for people to understand. Some people like the videos, some people prefer the written articles. My personal preference is I put main effort into writing the articles, then the videos supplement that and they cover specific issues. So I've got stuff on card printing and things like that. But have a look in the main review. It also has a link to all the videos I've created related to this printer, and includes links to other printer reviews and information I've done that may be relevant to this particular printer as well. So it's always worth checking there if you don't see what you want, but feel free to ask. Oh, and I should always mention, please do subscribe to the channel. It is appreciated. Anyway, this is the second ink tank printer I've looked at. The last one was the much larger 8550, which has more inks. It's an A3 size, or A3 plus 13-inch printer. It has more inks. Now, I will be having a look at the ET-2850, which is the smaller version of the 8550, similar size to this, but with more inks. I'll be having a look at that in due course, but this is just the 2850, which is, as I say, 4 inks. A lot of people would say you can't do proper photo printing on 4 inks. Well, you can. You just have to be careful with profiling, and I've generated lots of profiles. Have a look at the written review and you can see the paper profiles I've created for this, because Epson don't create many paper profiles. Paper suppliers don't either. I've got some profiles. They're available free for non-commercial use. If you have a look at the list in the main written review and drop me an email, I can sort you out some profiles to experiment with. And it does make quite a difference with a printer like this. Now, as I said, it's A4, there's a scanner on the top. Normal paper feed is at the back here, so the paper goes in here. You can stack quite a few sheets of plain paper, and with plain paper you can use there's a duplexer at the back. There's a section at the back comes out which has the duplex unit in it if paper gets jammed inside, so that's at the back here. But most of that, you'll feed the paper in here. It will take a good few sheets of plain paper, but if you're printing on heavier paper, particularly cards and the like, probably best to try 1 sheet at a time. I did try canvas in this, and I ended up, the canvas went in a bit and stayed there, and the printer just came up with an error. Obviously with canvas it's floppy, so you can't push it into the machine, it just doesn't do anything. So no, if you want to print small canvases, this is not the printer for it. But I was hardly expecting it. With all these printers, I've got relatively limited expectations because most of my testing, my detail testing, goes on what I would call proper photo printers, big printers, much bigger printers than this. Some of the prints around here were done on much larger printers when I've been testing, and I haven't used them for myself. So that's, remember what this is for. This is not sold as a dedicated photo printer. If you want a dedicated photo printer, guess what? You're going to have to buy a dedicated photo printer. Now, you can get some good stuff from this, but it's limited, which is what you'd expect really. You want a photo printer? Buy a photo printer. Anyway, that's where the paper goes. That's the paper guide for that, and that just drops back into there. Also around the back here is a maintenance cartridge. This captures ink overspray. Now the printer does print borderless, but it has only a certain range of paper sizes. Now you can use custom paper sizes, but some sizes, if you want to print, you can print fine borderless. Others you'll have to define, and I've made the borders a bit bigger here because they're a feature of these cards, but other times you will actually need to have a border on it. May only be a few millimeters, but you can't print borderless on all sizes. But that's the case for almost every printer I've looked at. In fact, I can't offhand think of a printer which allows borderless printing on custom sizes. They go Canon, Epson, fix it. That irritates quite a lot of people, and I can't see any good technical reasons why you shouldn't be able to do it. But anyway, if I'm printing with this, let's just lift the top up. Easy access, it locks into place there. So the printer's quite light, only weighs a few kilos. The head just goes back and forwards across here. Easy access for cleaning. If you print borderless much, you will almost certainly end up with ink spray collecting in here, and you will end up with ink and you'll need cleaning. Now, I've got a video that looks at cleaning for this, for the 8550, and it's essentially the same for this. Now, I mentioned the ink tanks, filling them up. Well, there's a little bit here. Here are the 4 ink tanks. These caps, the lever just comes up, opens up like that. You plonk your bottle of ink on top there. They're keyed, so you can't actually get them the wrong way around. You can't put the wrong bottle on, and they will fill. You don't need to squeeze them. In fact, you shouldn't squeeze them. Just let them drain freely. When the ink tank is full, it will stop filling. You don't need to get the last drop out of it. And in fact, when you set the printer up, you may well have some ink left over in the bottles. Use that for topping off afterwards. The ink levels you can see in the front here. Hope they're visible here, but they're fairly easy to see. When you top the ink up, you have to go in via the display here and tell the printer that you've topped up that ink tank. It has no way of knowing that it's full. Equally well, it has no way other than its own internal guesswork of knowing that the particular tank is almost empty. So keep an eye on the ink levels here. When you top them back up, mark it here as that you've topped off that channel, and it will reset the indicators that you see in software on your computer as to what ink levels are. They're based on you telling it what you've done. The same thing actually goes for cartridges. People think, well, do cartridges know how much ink is in them? No, they don't. The printer knows how much ink is in a full cartridge. It knows how much ink it has told the printer to use for printing and for cleaning, subtracts that from the full level, and that's why the printer at a certain point will say this cartridge is empty. Not because it's detected it's empty, but from the amount of ink it's used, it thinks it's likely to be empty. That's why it varies with different printers. When they say they're empty, you don't always have to change things until they're absolutely certain. There is usually a point beyond which they won't let you go, because really with inkjet printers you should not let them run out of ink on a channel. It really doesn't do them much good. In terms of maintenance, as I've said, cleaning, there's a maintenance tank at the back there for overspray and for cleaning. That will last for ages, so don't bother getting a spare maintenance tank until you see an indication that it's getting full. It will gradually fill up. And then it's a replacement beer. I've got some pictures on the actual written review that show details about where you change it, what you do. Connecting up, this is on wireless. There's a USB connection as well, works perfectly well with that. But in setting up the printer, probably the most difficult thing is actually finding all the packing tape that's been put around it. There is loads of it, so yeah, if you're setting up a brand new printer, careful with that. Now, the output tray here, it's not motorized, you have to pull it out like that. That's where output collects. If it's doing duplex, and you can't do duplex borderless because there needs to be some paper for the printer to tug on to bring it back in, a print will come through here and then it will go back through the duplex unit, be turned over and printed a second time. Works fine for plain paper for office use. So if you want duplex printing, that's it for office printing. If you want to print twice on cards, you're going to need to let the card go through, take it out, carefully turn it over, print the second side after the first side's dry, and then you can do it. There is no duplex on thicker photo media cards and the like. Now, in terms of printing, I said there are these inks here. We've got 4 inks. Now, normally when printing a photo, and this goes back to some of the earliest printers I had with 4 inks in them, the cyan, magenta, yellow and the black. It mixes all 4 and uses them for printing. Now, this pigment black does not work so well on glossy finish media. I've said details once again in the review, but essentially printing on photo media, only the colour inks are being used. Only 3 inks are being used. Now, I was quite surprised by the print quality it was possible to get from it, but put it next to a print that's using the black as well, and it's really quite obvious. You can print on photo media using the black by setting the matte paper option. If you set the matte paper option, then it will print with all 4 inks. However, that matte ink, whilst it looks great on a print, on a photo print, if you're looking at it with no light reflecting off, the moment you've got light reflecting off the print, the matte black looks very dull. Once again, pictures in the main review of it if you're curious about it. But it does mean you could technically print on glossy papers with the matte black and then spray your prints. But I'm going to suggest that if you're willing to go to those lengths, why not just buy a printer that prints on glossy paper to start with that does it? As I said, this is not aimed at that market. Look carefully when you're looking at these EcoTank printers at which versions of inks you've got in them, because they're aimed at slightly different markets. This one prints documents, coloured documents, does things very well. It's not quick. I mean, this is not a quick office feeder. There's no auto feeder for the scanner, for example. And if you're scanning a photograph in colour at high resolution, it can take several minutes to scan it. Scanner's perfectly good, works. You can scan remotely to your computer, no problem there. When it comes to printing, I tested several different ways of printing. This iMac here is running the latest Mac OS version 13, or Ventura, I believe it's called. That is the Epson print layout software. It is really useful software. If you are thinking of using this for printing photos like this, get the free software. It really works well. It also allows you to specify profiles if you've got them. I said normally there aren't any profiles. I have a few that I've created for this though. As I said, paper sizes, there are lots of options here. Mostly I've printed on A4 because that's common size here. I'll print letter and things as well. I've tried printing on, and here is a 300 gram postcards. This is used once again, matte paper setting. There's an artist watercolour here paper. This one's from Paper Spectrum in the UK. This one's from Permajet here. That is their artist watercolour 250. You think, 250. Well, if it prints on that matte 300, it's bound to be okay with 250. Don't make the mistake of assuming that the weight equates with thickness. Because the watercolour paper is less dense, it's thicker and it doesn't feed as well as the matte paper. So you can feed 300 gram art papers if they're fairly thin. Put the artist watercolour paper in, it goes in, it doesn't quite, you actually have to give it a push, which is what I was saying with the canvas. You can't push canvas, whereas with this paper it goes through. Needs a little bit of practice. I say this will work with thicker and art type papers, but be careful. You will be waiting a few minutes if you're printing at the highest quality. Highest quality does make a slight difference on this. If you've got good images and also if you've got, there's enough detail in the pictures. It's quicker, but it's still not quick printing normally. This is, as I say, it's a home printer for relatively light use, but for people who are concerned about the cost of inks. And from that point of view, it works really well. I've got, as I say, the 8500 to look at, and I will do a direct comparison of the 8500 with this printer when I've done the 8500 review. So if you're curious of that, I will actually see, is there anything this one does better than that? Now, my initial thoughts will be no, because that's a better printer, but I'm always prepared to be surprised. So there you have it. It's a really nice printer. Incidentally, you can print directly off phone. There's the phone software from Epson that controls this is really quite intuitive to use. Now, I don't like using phones for things. My close-up eyesight is not great unless I'm wearing stronger glasses. So hence I don't bother using a phone for most things. There is a photograph taken of this printer on my iPhone, old SE20, and directly then printed onto a matte paper, a matte photo paper. There's a 240 gram matte paper, and that is the print of this as printed directly from my phone. Seems to work. Likewise, these cards have come out really rather nice. Now, because they're dye inks, I can't say much about their longevity, about how long that these prints will last, and whether they'll still look great in 2 years' time. But I'm going to say you don't normally sell greetings cards and expect people to then frame them and keep them for years. If you have a market like that, you will go for potentially, I would say, a more expensive printer. Something with all pigment inks or something with a different variety of inks for it. It's about what you actually want to print with it. So, there we have, there's the outline of this. I hope that's of some use. Please do ask questions. Have a read of the main printed review, the main written review, though, if you want more detail. As I say, I've tested stuff. We've got papers here from Permajet. I've got cards. Some of these cards are from Paper Spectrum in the UK. Others are from Photospeed in the UK. All good suppliers will do stuff like this. It will work. The problem is, if you want glossy photo prints on this particular printer, you're going to be very limited. There's a glossy Target print actually done on, that's a metallic paper. Yeah, it works, but the black is very weak on it. So it doesn't bring out, this is an excellent paper that I've used for a lot of things, but it just doesn't do its best on here. You need a matte paper for it. So there you go. Please do ask questions. Oh, and as I mentioned before, subscribe to the channel. It is appreciated. So thank you for watching.